Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Oh,
I think we're rolling, man.
just my... Bro, usually you say your net. Oh,
No.
wait, no, you're last.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Go. Mike Trombley from Red House Electronics.
Hey, it's me, Todd Novak. Welcome. And I have got somebody super special sitting right across from me. Not Mike's special too, but there's another extra special dude here.
Chase Gullett from Chasing Vintage Guitars.
Yes, sir. Chasing Vintage Guitars. I have been waiting about, it's got to be a year and a half anyways, trying to coordinate this, which is hilarious because you live like maybe 20 minutes away.
Nice.
Yeah. Not hilarious on like, wow, you really made this difficult, Chase.
Well, I didn't mean to. It was just
No.
things get complicated,
Yeah,
man.
things that get busy. But it's also one of those things that's maybe 20, it's more like maybe 30, 35. But I didn't want to just actually phone it in,
yeah, those don't go well.
I didn't want to do that because you're close enough. Anyway, so for everybody out there listening, welcome. We are glad you are listening. We're glad you have chosen our podcast to download. We greatly appreciate all your contact. In fact, right before we rolled in here, I got a comment from Liam Martin, who joined our Facebook group. He's coming out of Sydney, Australia. It's just, again, when you're doing your thing in your own little world, and then someone from across the world, shakes your hand, that's pretty cool. And so I greatly appreciate that, everybody. So we're recording today in a very special place in an undisclosed location. We're in Chase's workshop, and it's pretty dang cool here. We're right in the thick of everything that he does, everything he's building and working on. So Chase builds some really, really beautiful guitars. If you have been following along at all, you've known that I've mentioned him a couple times and have definitely posted a few things on Facebook group. These are 100% handmade. They have a ton of amazing detail. We're going to get into all that business. I'm so glad we get to share this with everybody. But right now, let's just kind of touch on what's going on in our music world at the moment and spin the wheel of Mike.
Okay. So,
No, wait a minute. I almost forgot. We're missing Jared today.
Oh, snap.
Pour a little out for Jared. Don't pour any, though, because they'll get really sticky on the floor. But, so Jared had something that took him away from the podcast. He was very distraught. This is, I think this is the first one that he's missed since he's been an active knob. And so, Jared, we're missing you today, and we wish you were here. We're having a really killer time.
Oh, it's amazing. We're having so much fun.
We are having fun. When we showed up, let me just give a little bit of context, and then we'll get into what we've been doing this week. But sorry to cut you off, Mike. We rolled up, and Chase greeted us at the front, and we came in and instantly just started geeking out on everything that we had to talk to each other about guitars. Mike brought in a pedal board full of his Red House Electronics pedals, and then Chase said, well, I better go grab the Mesa Boogie.
We just jammed.
Start tearing it up, yeah. And don't kid yourself, Chase plays a mean guitar. He'll tell you he won't, but I heard some mighty, mighty tasty stuff coming out of there.
A little bit of the nooge.
Yeah.
He did. He busted out the
I just like to say nooge.
Yeah, the
nooge.
The nooge. Hey, that one's for Joe Branton. So anyhow, it's been great. Like, I almost forgot that we were here to do a podcast.
It's been fun.
I almost forgot
we feel very welcome, and I really appreciate that.
Good. You guys are more than welcome. Come back anytime. Bring the pedals.
Oh, cool. Tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's do that. So anyways, Mike, let's get back into this because we got a lot to talk to Chase about. What'd you do this week? What's going on?
Okay, so this week, so it's going to sound really elementary, but like I went and bought new patch cables. For the longest time.
Why does that sound elementary?
I don't know. I just usually I feel like I don't have anything grand as far as like new pedals, new amps or anything, but patch cables.
Okay.
But anyways, usually, like I buy the solderless patch cables, which not too much an issue, but I'm just, when it comes to assembly, I'm not the best and I get really impatient at it. So recently I just been buying soldered patch cables, and just recently I picked up the Pancake, and it's my first time using the Pancake patch cables. And dude, I just love the way they save so much space on my pedal board, and so I'm actually able to cram at least a couple more pedals. You do have a pretty tight pedal board. Yeah,
pedal board.
Yeah, super tight.
Say that.
But yeah, so I did the Pancake patch cables, and I just bought a couple just to see how they'd roll, and they've been working out fine. And so I'm actually gonna order a couple more and see how that goes.
Any particular kind that you're getting, or
these ones?
There's a million out there. So
yeah, there's a ton out there, and like I said, I just bought some just to see how they work and fit. I bought some of the Hosa ones or something. They were just off of Amazon, but I might check out some other companies. Support some local biz.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
who's got some really slick Pancake patch cables is Hank at Rattlesnake.
Oh yeah, and he's from Montana too.
And he's from Montana, and he hand makes them.
Yeah.
So if anybody's looking for good patch cables, check them out.
Hometown state.
Oh yeah, that's where you're from there.
Yeah. Yeah, Montana.
So you guys are probably friends.
Yeah. Oh, dude,
everybody in Montana knows everybody.
It's a little neighborhood.
It's not a huge state or anything.
No. So Chase, what's going on with you, man?
I guess today actually was a pretty cool day for us as Chasing Vintage Guitars, I guess. We added an artist to our roster, Nathan Travis. Kid is just phenomenal. He's like the triple threat. He writes songs, he plays a mean guitar, and he's got a great voice. So he's going to be heading down to Nashville here pretty soon. And
cool. Doing
some things, and so you guys should check him out.
Yeah. What did he? Do you want to? Can you disclose what he?
Oh, he's playing our Model T right now.
Okay.
He picked up a Model T from us. It's a gorgeous guitar. One of my favorite builds as far as the color combination. It's got a great like whitewash finish. So it's like a transparent. You can see like the ash body.
You do a wicked whitewash, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So it's the whitewash, and then he's got the tort bindings, which from a distance you're like, oh, that's cool. It's it's a black bound Telly, but like you get on it and you're like, oh wow, this tort really, like when the light comes through and like reflects back, it really like pops nice and adds a good little flavor to it. It's double bound too, which I think is the only way a Telly should be. I'll sacrifice the belly cut for the double bindings any day.
Yeah.
And gold pick guard set up with Seymour Duncan pickups. Had the Jerry Donahue in the bridge there. Great pickup too. It's very nice like Telly twang, but it doesn't get so far into the ice pick range, so it's real versatile. Kid just great guitar player though, so you guys should keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's
where can they go? Where can they see what this guitar might look like?
He will be posting some pictures, I'm sure, on his site, nathantravismusic.com. We've got some pictures on our Instagram and probably somewhere on our Facebook, still a little bit of that. The Model T is our Telly style guitar, and we've kind of been focused the last year mostly on the Challengers and the Cudas, and we've got another one kind of in the works. You guys got to see that a little bit earlier. That'll be revealed in the future. Actually, if you guys want to pop over and follow us on Instagram, we're like 300 likes away from 5K, and
nice.
5K is when we drop the photo bomb of the new model. So
I've seen it. It's pretty sweet.
Thanks.
What's the Insta handle?
It is chasing_vintage_guitars. I always pick the longest names. I'm bad at picking the names. So
yeah, we were just talking about the. So obviously your name is Chase.
Yeah,
and your brand is called Chasing Vintage, which gives you some troubles sometimes. You want to discuss
does.
That?
Yeah, it was a poor. I overthought it. In my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be slick, like, so like even the logo, it's my initials, like the Shield logo.
It's a great logo. That's one of the best guitar logos out there. I mean, like legit.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my initials, but it's also like, so like it's, CAG, Chase Allen Gullett, and then the initials CVG. So it's basically, I just flipped the A inside there, and I was like, oh, it's going to be cool. I'm going to be like Da Vinci Code, it's going to be all, this, and it was just dumb. It was poor naming. So CVG is kind of like it's kind of the Paul Reed Smith PRS, Chasing Vintage. CVG is kind of, I guess, where my brain thought that was going to go. So we'll see how it pans out over time. But yeah, great guitarist, bad name. It should be like the tagline.
So hopefully, if you guys are listening, I mean, hopefully, I know you're listening. That's why you're hearing me right now. But we are located in an undisclosed place that has got a little bit of traffic right next to us, so hopefully that's not too bad of an issue, and you can stick it out with us. We greatly appreciate it. It's just we couldn't not do it in the workroom. We're literally recording at a table saw right now. I've got all the mics hooked up. We got everything spread out on this table saw. Mike, don't cut yourself. And it's definitely unique. I mean, it's bringing a vibe to us right now that
definitely way different than the usual interview place.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, for my guitar week, I'm beside myself because I just got a really killer deal on a guitar that I've been wanting for some time. Actually, right in the middle of our one of the last interviews that we did with Metaverse, I got the message, the okay, like let's do this.
Nice.
And I told Matt, I said, Matt, you're gonna have to be can I call you right back in like an hour, please? And he's, yeah, man, no problem. So I raced down and to the parking lot and met the dude and gave him my money. He gave me a really good deal. And I got my black Hagstrom Viking.
Nice.
Ooh.
And man, it's sweet. I just love it.
That's dedication.
Oh man. It has, I love the 335 style. I have a Sheraton 2, so I'm a fan of that style, the semi-hollow, and I'm starting a new project, and I bought one guitar for it, and I had to get the other one for it. I tend to do that if I get really excited about a project. I'm like, it needs these kind of guitars, right? So the first one I got for the project is a Les Paul Special Double Cutaway. And then that's black, and I had to get a gold pick guard. And then this one, it's the finish on this is really sweet because it's like an old piano. So it's not like pure 100% gloss piano black. It just kind of looks like an older piano. It just, there's something to it that just
like it has some class
so
to it.
attractive, man. But it's not the super high polish. It's just got some extra character,
that kind of worn in feel to it a little bit.
Age on it.
Yeah, and it has just the right amount of age to it. And I plugged it in, and it's like, man, just rock just poured out of that thing. I was like so happy.
Nice.
Anyway, so I was super excited about that. I'll probably post some pictures of it, pretty soon because I got to do that. I did have to sacrifice 2 guitars for it, but they were ones that I was willing to part with. It's what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah. I
would like to keep them all, but got responsibilities. Anyhow, enough about me. I'm sad we can't ask Jared what he's been up to because he'd probably tell us about his Gibson L6.
Ooh, nice. My buddy used to have one of those.
Yeah, the orange sparkle. Anyways, so we ended up mentioning it. Great. I just did that to myself. Okay, guys, so we are in the garage with Chase. A little bit of background on why we wanted to pull him into this. When I moved here to Ohio, I went to the first guitar show I went here. I walked in, I turned left, I saw this display with arguably some of the most beautiful guitars that I'd really seen, period. And not only were they, beautiful to look at, but they were actually pretty unique as well in their in the approach, the design approach. A couple of the things that really struck me about it, about the way that he was doing things was there's a reach towards the vintage, but not in an obligatory way. The tastefulness of the small details. It's one thing to just kind of see an image of a guitar and just say, oh, that one looks pretty cool. But then you get up and you hold it and you see all of these small details that make up the whole, and you understand why you can't take your eyes off and why it feels special, why it looks special. And to know that the guy right in front of me built that with his bare hands in a town really close to wherever I may or may not live.
See, you understand.
And I just had an immediate connection, got to talking, and Chase is a super nice guy, obviously really passionate about his work. And I thought, man, I really got to share this with everybody. So you were officially slated to be the very first guest on the podcast.
Oh, that's cool.
So 45 episodes later.
Sounds about right. See, you must have been operating on my schedule. I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. Give me run a little behind here.
Yeah.
So it happens, man. Things happen. It gets busy and it's fine.
Well, I had no problem with it because I think just after our first conversation, I knew that, the door was going to be open.
Always.
I made it open to you. You made it open to me. So here we are, and couldn't be more thrilled.
I'm just glad we finally got to sit down. I mean, we played email tag for 6-7 months there for a while.
Yeah.
And so it's just
to get to the sometime in the future.
Yeah. Yep. So,
but you're busy making lots of guitars, and that's
trying to be. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm talking to somebody about guitars and stuff, I always like to get an idea of where's your background? How did you end up here? And we won't beat that to death and make it a super long drawn out thing. But I'd really love to know where you started in guitar.
Okay. Let's see. There I am with the uhs and ums. When I was a kid, my family's very gospel oriented. I grew up, grandma played piano in the church, and aunts and uncles would, pick banjo and play guitar and bass and, you name it, and they were playing it. So, I grew up in a very musical family, and, before I could even play guitar, I thought guitars were cool because, my old man liked Eddie Van Halen, and Eddie Van Halen was ripping on guitar. So guitars are awesome.
Yeah.
I had a grandpa that, ran like a secondhand shop, out in, it's a very small town in Ohio, Chesterville, Ohio, and it was called the Secondhand Rose. And he would hang out there all the time, and it's 5 or 6, and a ball of creativity is a polite way to put it. With markers on the walls and things of that nature. So we're out there, and I paid $2 for this old Harmony, piece of junk, off the wall, and thought it was the coolest thing. Take it home, don't even know how to play a guitar, take it apart, paint it up like, it's Eddie Van Halen's guitar, and think it's the coolest thing. And that was kind of like the initial, first memory I have of a guitar was me destroying a guitar, in a way. It never went back to, it's like 6 or 7 years old. I didn't know how to use a soldering iron. I cut the wires, So, fast forward to, 15, 16 years old, started, reading Guitar World and things like that. Learn from tablature, that's the way to go.
That's the way I did. Yeah.
But, so.
Do you remember what your first tab was?
Smells Like
that
Teen
you actually
Spirit,
learned.
The first full song was Smells Like Teen Spirit.
What a classic.
Yeah. So, it was, yeah.
Do you want, ask me what mine was.
Hey, Todd, what was yours?
Holy Wars from Megadeth.
See, that's so much more impressive, though.
He went from 0 to 10 really quick.
I'm like, man, I hit 2 notes. Ding, ding. I was like, I'm a rock star. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
I don't. I don't know why.
You just went for it.
I guess so.
Yeah, well, that's good though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, kind of did that, played around in bands and stuff. As I grew up, I got into cabinetry and manufacturing, worked a handful of, different jobs, for years at a time, kind of developing my skill set and how to build things. And, of course, eventually you're like, oh, I think I'm going to try to make a guitar. So, 5 years ago, something like that, I, took the first step. I did, I found looking for cheap guitars on Craigslist, the old, you were talking about earlier, the sketchy meet in the parking lot, like, hey man, meet at the KFC, get some fried chicken at EMG 81. All right. So, you go out and you do the thing. So I found this Craigslist ad, and it was for a carven neck through blank, and some pieces of mahogany, and it was like super good deal. It's like $100, like the carven necks.
Solid guitar, man.
Yeah. So I mean, it was just a pile of parts. And I'm like, all right, well, cool. I'll try it. So I did, of course, the quintessential. I'm going to make a Paul Reed Smith style guitar and carved top, and it was cool. It came. I still have that guitar actually. It came out. I'll bring it out and let you guys check it out before you split. You'll see number one. So and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and tried it. It came out a little better than I thought it would. Tried it again. They also came out, and then I found myself like really limited by buying prefab necks. I'm like, man, I'd like to start getting into some inlay work and some things like that. So, next step, I buy a bandsaw, and then I'm like, oh, well, I start doing it. I don't know how the bandsaw went. I went 0 to 100 there. Anyway, long story short, worked in the cabinet shops, learned how to, kind of self-taught in the luthier end of things, and, just kind of started building guitars. They kept getting nicer as I went, and then I started doing my own thing, and people started recognizing it as something that was kind of cool and unique, and now we're here. So that's kind of the general rundown, I guess.
So when did you start doing the carpentry?
When I was 16, 17, I started part-time in the summers. I'd go out and started doing interior trim first, like running baseboard and things like that. And then left there. I went to a industry that made mobile command centers and mobile video trucks. Essentially, it's like Super Bowl, like all the cameras feed into like the giant semi thing. Kind of went into that industry, which was really kind of a cool turning point, because that was one of the first times I saw things really develop into people actually building stuff from raw materials. I mean, we would literally take sheets of aluminum and take them to the press brake and bend up boxes, and we made everything from scratch. And it was really kind of cool to like wow, this is how these things are made. It's not some crazy magic robot somewhere. It's just guys like me doing a task, and it's a bunch of small steps. You just do each step, and then eventually you have a finished thing. And that was kind of like a cool thing that set with me, from there on out, as to how to construct things and how to build things. Was it's just one step at a time, and just do it well, and then move to the next one and do it well. And that kind of just.
Did you find it did you find like a huge difference in going from, because I'm assuming, because there's a high level of detail with guitars. I mean, because adjustments are made really fine.
Yeah, thousands of an inch.
So when you went from doing cabinets to doing guitars, did you notice that? As far as me, like when I'm doing pedals, I know that. I know when I mess up on something, I'm like, oh gosh, but somebody else wouldn't notice that.
Yeah.
And so did you find it hard to, focus on the details without getting too focused on the details, if that makes sense?
Oh, no. Yes. Initially, I was lucky that after I left the mobile vehicle, kind of sort of like RV type thing. Anyway, once I left there, I went to work at Worth Cabinetry. There, he was doing like aircraft grade stuff. I mean, it was just like incredibly high end cabinetry, and I actually owe a lot to Matt Worth as a mentor. Like I would not be able to do what I do now had it not been for him. He really pushed me in that like detail oriented fashion, and so coming from there, actually just prior to this, I was moonlight on the weekends and stuff. I'd go in on the weekend, and he was nice enough to open up the shop to me. I'd go in and I'd work on guitars on the weekends, and then eventually it just turned into, hey, I'm gonna step out on my own, and this is what I'm gonna do. So I owe a lot to him in that regard, but I wasn't as good as I thought I was either. When I first kind of came out, some of the first couple of guitars, it's you start looking back on things and you start seeing little details here and then, you're like, oh wow, like I thought that was the greatest thing ever when I did it, but looking at it now, man, that's a little rough, here and there. So, there was a little bit of a learning curve there. So thank you to the close friends for the first, 5 or 6 builds and, patience and things. But, as it went, I mean, it just, I partnered up with a gentleman, and he's, the partner of the company, and, he's a, huge guitar collector. So it was kind of nice is, as I would, build stuff, I'd, take it out to him, and he'd, like 100% like tear it apart. And I'm like, that's what I need, so it was kind of cool. Cause as I was getting started, I take stuff out, and he's like, oh man, he's like, this is great. But like, right around here, you got just a little, there's a little nub right there. Can you? That should be a little. Details. Yeah. And it was nice. You
need somebody in your life that'll do that for you.
Yeah. I mean,
even if you're not building something.
Yeah. I try to push and have an eye for that, and but having an extra set of eyes is definitely helpful with that. And we're getting to the point now where it kind of it was nice because it very quickly turned into almost like a game, like. What can you find now? Where there's 2 mistakes on that guitar. Where are they? Man, let me get out my 3 times readers here and go at it. And so it kind of turned into like it was very helpful, and then 20, 30 guitars later, now it's they just are what they are.
Yeah, because that's something I always wondered, because when you're just cutting a piece of wood to put on a porch or something, just to do a repair or something like that, you kind of have this leeway of like, at least like 1/8 of an inch or something like that you can get away with. But when it comes to the guitars, there's no slacking on that, detail. And that's what always just, is mind boggling for me as far as when it gets down to, because I don't build guitars or anything like that. And that just something always blows my mind, because, when you pick it up, I mean, you feel the imperfections, so I just feel like that would be really stressful to have to build.
Well, to the point where Chase was kind enough to show us a prototype that, I said, can I pick it up? He says, yeah. The next nut bolted on. I make a tight joint, it was, I mean, you couldn't fit a piece of paper between that joint. And that's that was a Harley. Oh, that was a big boy.
Yeah, we get those.
So just that how you get down to that amount doesn't come easy, and you can't rush that, I imagine, right?
No, you get everything really close, and then I mean it's a lot of like fine tuning. I mean once it almost fits, you're like, oh yeah, it's there. It's almost there, perfect. You got like 2 more hours of just like, one pass with a little bit of sandpaper, one little, nudge with a chisel. And I mean, but it matters. I think it matters. I mean, there's, it's debatable, I guess, as anything else is, nitro versus poly and, a million other like fire starting conversations. But I think a tight neck joint is very important.
I would agree.
It just, it transfers everything.
Well, and you're not doing bolt on either. So
no, everything. Yeah, it's all set neck. So, I haven't done a bolt on in a long time.
I think that's, I just want to touch on something when you started to go into the decision to actually build a guitar. You said you started with that first one, which was a kit, and it was a neck through.
Yeah.
So at what point did you say, I'm ready to do a neck? And I would love, because that's where I get hung up. Like, I get people telling me all the time, because of my design background and my attention to aesthetic, and because I run a guitar podcast, they're like, dude, you should build a guitar. And I'm like, no way, man. because I don't want to, because I love doing, you know, I build pedals every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Because I like getting my hands on things. But that right there, the neck, is enough to make me go, do not kid yourself, bro.
They're not that bad, man. It's one step at a time. I mean, it really is that simple. I mean, you want to try to excel at every one of the steps that you go, but I mean, you got 22 fret slots, it's still just 22 single cuts, and it's a lot of math and a lot of layout is, I guess, really the biggest thing there. A lot of double checking yourself. But in the end, it is that simple. You do one step, you do the next step, you do the next step, and it just kind of goes. For me though, it was about 3 guitars in. I decided it was time to start building necks. I was like, this is cool, but I'd really like to, have a little more leeway. It was actually I remember I made 2 baritones, and it's hard to find a baritone neck, especially if you're wanting to do a neck through. And so I did a couple of baritones for my friend Brock, and when I built those guitars, that was kind of like, was the tipping point was, well, you can't go buy this, so you've got to build it. And so they were 27 and 3/4 inch scale. And I still offer a 27 and 3/4 inch scale if somebody orders one, but it's not something I do as like a standard model. So that was kind of what started that. And then after that, I did the first Screaming Chicken prototype, which was I was dead set when I first started this that, the neck through was like the way to go. That's the absolute best guitar. And as I've found, I actually am a big fan of the set neck. It's tonality wise, it's nice. I use a deep tenon on it too. So, the neck joint actually comes all the way into the bottom of like the humbucker pocket. So, I mean, there's a lot of meat there that's actually holding the guitar together. And I find it to be real resonant. It's not incredibly difficult to do, to get it right and get your break angles right and everything. And as long as all that's there, man, they sound, and I can't tell a difference between that and, a neck through, but I like the break angles and things like that, which for me personally gets difficult to try to pull off with a neck through design. Right. They tend to want to be a flatter plane on the guitar, and I think that the break angle does something to the tonality of it. It's you've got your strings are bending at 2 different points, and they're bending hard, and it just makes it, in my opinion, it becomes a little more musical that way. And I like it. It gets the strings up off of the body a little bit, and that, in an acoustic guitar, a lot of your tones or your sound is coming from, the strings ricocheting, the sound waves ricocheting off the back of the guitar and then coming back up through the sound hole. And, that distance and that liveliness that you get there, I feel like with the set neck, having, the break angles helps that. Yeah. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, if you're at home and would like to do this test, and you have a flat top, like a dreadnought or something, and an arch top, you'll hear a very distinct difference. And really, the only difference there is you got a neck, you got a break, and you've got a raised bridge, right? Yes, on an arch top, you've got your raised bridge. You obviously, there's a little bit of an arch, but for most part, you're talking about a wood box and strings that are attached on one end and another. Yeah. But of those 2 types of guitar, like on a dreadnought, it's like those strings are so close to the body. For most, I'm sure somebody's gonna be, no, not that one guitar, Yeah, I mean that's there's exceptions to every rule. Yeah, but it's there's a sweet musicality that you can't get from a dreadnought that you can on an arch top. That you do it, you hit it, and you're like, oh man, that sounds fantastic. I think that when you're talking about that, that's immediately what I started thinking about. Yeah, it's a subtle thing. It's not like you blind test, plug in a bolt on, that doesn't really, like a Telly or something that doesn't have a lot of break angle versus, you plug in like a ES335, like, well, that's not an apples to apples, but, or an SG. So you got a Telly and an SG, one of them's got a break angle. Plug in a blind test, you're probably 9 times out of 10, nobody's going to notice the difference. Me personally, maybe it's all in my noggin, but I
think there's a difference between hearing
necks.
it through an amp also.
Yeah,
versus
that's true
when
too.
you're playing it, even if you are playing through an amp, you still feel it and you still can hear that music from the guitar not coming out of the amp,
Yeah.
So anyways, this is the Tone podcast.
Yeah, sorry. Oh man, that's going to be a can of worms. I'm going to have like 30 people on the Instagram say, man, you have no clue what you're talking. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't.
Wake them up then.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm okay with that.
No, dude, I like it. I mean, because, as far as me being, a builder, I mean, there's some stuff I can't describe. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's only, like when we were coming here on the ride, over here, you were using food terms to describe your tone.
That's true.
Yeah.
I like a little candy cane in my distortion.
Yeah, I use
still don't understand this term.
I use the term umami.
The what?
Umami, which is it's a Japanese phrase that it describes a somewhat indescribable flavor.
Okay.
It describes
or
Todd's
taste.
complexity of his brain.
This is true. Anybody
Rather
that
than he
knows
could
me
say
well,
it sounds amazing, he says it sounds unami.
well,
Umami.
umami.
Umami. Sorry, yeah. See, I don't even remember.
Yeah. So essentially, we were talking about the difference between a tube screamer and a clon, or a clone, or whatever kind of clonny kind of overdrive that you like. I was talking to him about one of the ones that I built, and I said, "Hey, I'd love for you to play it and just tell me what you think." We got into the tube screamer versus blah blah blah, and I was saying that I liked how mine sound because it had a bit of a indescribable ghost tonality to it, kind of like umami. And he's like, what?
And of course I had to go to Wikipedia and then read it.
Yeah.
And even after reading the description, I thought I got it. And then I described it to Todd and he's like, no, that's not it. So I still don't know.
Yeah. That's kind of my MO. So anyways,
it's above my pay grade.
So let's see. You started building your own guitars. We got into, a little bit how you did that. Now, what did you hit? What was the first bump in the road where you was like, oh, or maybe there wasn't one. I don't know. I'm guessing.
Pick a day. No. One of the biggest struggles I think I ran into initially was it kind of started off as nobody knowing, the people willing to take the risk on, trying an unknown builder and things like that, which that's started to subside a little bit. I mean, there's lots of bumps. Material cost was one of the big ones. We spoke briefly earlier today about that, actually, that being a thing. People, it's very easy to, I could buy a insert big brand name guitar here for that amount of money. Why would I, and you get a lot of that. And what people don't understand is it's actually pretty costly to build by hand. I mean, it's months and months of work to start a guitar and, go from, you guys see the wood pile, to go from literally beams of wood and to turn that into a playable instrument and all the labor that goes into that and the cost of materials too. I mean, like the large companies and stuff, I mean, they're buying truckloads of stuff. I mean, we're just I'm one guy. A truckload of mahogany would last me the rest of my career, that's not the model that I build about 20 to 30 guitars a year right now, and that's
still a lot. That seems
that's cooking too. Yeah. That's so, it's just, it takes time. And that was kind of one of the nice things about, when we partnered up, it kind of opened up some doors to, making things a little more feasible, to where it was, hey, I can get a pizza tonight, so it was kind of, it was nice to, that was one of the biggest hurdles, was trying to break into I need to be able to buy enough stuff to make this feasible that I could afford to sell these and, you know, not be literally giving them away.
Yeah.
So that was kind of one of the biggest hurdles that we had to cross there. And you know, like, building a name. I mean, it's hard, especially, you know, if you haven't, you know, I didn't work at Paul Reed Smith's custom shop for 20 years, or, you know, didn't work for Gibson. You know, none of that stuff. I'm, you know, self-taught, you know, I'm a guy that happened to discover I had a pretty good talent for something. And, you know, we've been lucky that some guys have recognized that and, you know, really ran with it and really championed what I build. Dirk Miller, for instance, from Rusted Roots, been a big guy with helping promote the guitars and things. I've also got some other friends that aren't as limelighty, but also are very incredibly. Bill Hilt, for instance, a great musician, just has just pages of things that of accomplishments that he's done. But he's also, you know, he's not a like in the spotlight guy. But, you know, if he was been a huge supporter from like day one, though, you know, I mean, you know, it started off with, you know, hey man, can you do some setup work on a couple of these guitars? To, wow, man, you make some pretty nice guitars. Could you make me a couple of guitars? You know, and he's turned into a repeat customer multiple times. I think I've built 4 guitars for him now since then. And, you know, just, you know, it's nice. It's like you get those guys and it's like, those are like family. Like, you know, those guys come in and you're like, man, like, you know, you believed in me when like nobody knew who I was, and, you know, you saw something and you kind of like rolled with it. So it's always kind of cool with that aspect. And, you know, you see like a guy that you sold a guitar, you know, 2 years ago, you know, David Allman from Telly Command Band we were talking about earlier. You know, they'll post, they just had a recent show and posted some pictures up, and it's like just him like ripping on like a Cuda, and I'm like, man, that's so awesome. Like, the guy is ecstatic about this guitar that I built, and, you know, he loves it. I see every time they post photos, he's playing that guitar, and it's just it's a very personal and I guess prideful feeling. I mean, you know, pride's
you
probably
signed
a bad
the back
thing,
of your
but
headstocks.
Yeah, I do. I didn't before. I didn't for a while. Actually, I started signing them around number 25 or so.
Mm-hmm.
But the early guitars I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. I think it was part of that. I guess part of that. People taking a chance thing. I guess when I first came out, like, I didn't really want to like promote it as, hey, I'm a one-man shop, because I was afraid that people would be like, oh man, like, look at this, you know, goofy guy. Like, it's just some guy trying to do a thing, you know? So I wanted to kind of like, I tried to be very careful that like I didn't divulge too much, and I guess tried to,
you can't come out too big either.
Yeah.
Like,
you know,
that's
it's like
a delicate balance.
Perfect balance.
So I didn't like, I didn't push a whole lot of like the, hey, look at me, I'm the builder kind of thing, like out the gate. And I don't know if it was helpful or hurtful. I mean, some guys I'm sure like into the idea that, man, like, you're the guy that cut the wood and you glued that and you inlaid my fret, like, you did every bit of this, you know. And other guys are like, oh man, like, I'd rather have a factory built instrument. You know, it's just an appreciation for, you know, two different things, you know. So I
think that there's also an element of, you know, one thing that you're providing for someone who is interested in a handmade instrument or any kind of craft, whatever you're in, whatever you do, the idea that someone like how I felt, I'm like, I discovered you, right? I didn't discover you for everyone else, but you didn't hand me a pamphlet and say, here's my jam, dude, you are gonna love it.
Yeah.
I stumbled on like this little treasure, and I was like, oh my gosh, look what I found, you know. And that's a special, that doesn't happen much these days. So when you do find that, it's really impactful, you know. Clearly I'm sitting here because of that. So,
which is very cool.
You know, I think that whatever path that you chose, like, I think is great. And I appreciate when I see that in other people, and that's something that I've really tried to focus on with this podcast in particular. I mean, Mike's another guy just like that. You know, it was like, he didn't send me anything. He didn't. I found him accidentally, and I didn't find his voice telling me how awesome stuff is. I had to kind of discover it a little bit.
I got to say the same thing, actually. When you came in, he was telling, like, Todd was like, oh yeah, we're doing, pedals and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm not really a pedal. But you came in, I'm like, oh, cool pedals. You plugged them in. I was like, holy cow, those are awesome. Like just really great sounding stuff. And that's cool. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like, like, I'm like, oh, but I'm like, man, like, you going to leave a couple of those here with me? Like, it's kind of triggers that thing where you know,
I know exactly.
Well, and I had to tell you.
You did.
Same thing with Jared too. Those are the kind of people that are in this industry. Like Jared or Mike are not the type of people that are going to go, let me tell you about the thing that I do, blah, 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 and I'm so great. Yeah, it's like Mike doesn't put pedals together. He designs the sound that goes into the pedal.
Yes.
But he's not...
It shows, like... They
you have
sound
to ask
incredible.
Him that. That's the thing. That's the only way you find out. Or listen to episode number. I can't remember what episode, but if you want to hear that episode when we first interviewed Mike Trombley of Red House Electronics, you can listen to it on theguitarknobs.com for free.
Oh yeah,
nice.
My favorite price,
right? Nice. So let's talk about. I made a big hoo-ha about your aesthetic or your design choices, and talk to me about what influenced that and, how you kind of found, because that is somewhat, that's a luthier signature.
Yeah. It was a lot of nights at the light table. A lot of nights, asking, my fiance, hey, what do you think of this? Oh, that's cool. Maybe, okay, I agree, and, a lot of that, and then trial and error and stuff. And, from the, it was just, I guess the influences in it, if I had to kind of break them down, some of them are probably going to seem a little odd. Like if you kind of
shoot,
the concept,
if you see a refrigerator, I'm not going to get it.
But. It was space fun. Yeah. No, the concept as a whole though, I did want to design something that felt familiar, but also really kind of like set itself apart, and like, I mentioned earlier, like I wanted to Da Vinci my name. It's like this weird like term. I watched some documentary on Da Vinci and, and it was talking about how he technically like borrowed things here and there, so a lot of his inventions, he might not have been the initial inventor of the
He didn't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, there would be like he would like cherry pick 3 or 4 little things like, oh man, if these 4 guys would have got together, they could have made this.
Right.
And that was kind of like how
like an Arnold Palmer.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
You had your lemonade, you had your iced tea.
Yeah.
Combine them, it's an amazing drink.
Yeah. So that was kind of how it happened. I was like, oh man, I really like the way like a Firebird headstock looks, but I like the carved details and things like that, but I don't actually like the Firebird headstock, and
right.
I loved the big 70s Strat headstocks.
Yeah.
Those were awesome. I thought those were the coolest thing, so, there's like a little bit of elements of both of those kind of built into the headstock. And so that kind of is where that sort of kind of came from. And then, the Moss Rights, and I've always had a thing for like cheap old guitars. Growing up, like we didn't have Gibsons in the family. We had a lot of Harmonies and Ks and things like that. And so that was we had actually one of my favorite guitars was like an old Kent 857, if I remember correctly, 3 pickup, semi hollow, kind of like a Bigsby type tremolo, real cool guitar. But sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
No, man.
So back on the guitars. So it was essentially kind of like a little bit of Iceman, a little bit of SG, a little bit of Jazzmaster, a little bit of Moss Right, a little bit of Arnold Hoyer. A
little bit of Dodge Charger in there too.
In the names, I somehow I'm actually a Chevy guy. I'm a GM guy, and somehow I ended up landing on like the Mopar No Car, name thing there somehow. I got to the Challenger and the Cuda.
Well, there's when we were talking about something familiar, when I look at most of the ones that you have, maybe except for the Telly, I get thrown back to when I was a kid, and there were wood panel walls with posters on them and a stereo and pictures of muscle cars and stuff. That's what it feels like.
That's my childhood, man.
Right? You know,
like, yeah, I mean, that is kind of a lot of it. I mean, growing up too, like my dad for money or what, you know, he would paint cars. So he'd like flip car, you know, he was like the gas monkey before there was a gas monkey,
right.
You know, so he would, so growing up, there was always like a lot of old cars, like old Mustangs, old Buicks, you know. We had a 60 Impala at one point in time. Awesome car. Wish he would have kept that one. But, so growing up, you know, it was a lot of like riding around, you know, no seat belts in the front seat and stuff. Sure. And so, you know, there's definitely is some like automotive influence in some of that stuff. And
I've maintained I mean, that permeates guitar world, building culture, everything. You can't not look at a guitar and sorry, you can't look at a guitar and not somehow draw some connection to some type of car.
Well, you know, the electric guitar, you know, coming out in the 50s and the 60s, you know, was really where a lot of it like really like grew its roots, you know, for the like solid bodies, you know. So but it was also a huge time for like Detroit and like the cars. So I mean, well, just everything in general.
Flashy
It's like a
paint,
space
shiny
age, man.
metal.
Yeah, it was
curves.
like, you know, they don't build them like they used to. And I mean, they really don't, you know. I think that a lot of you know, stuff now could just kind of like really like a lot of like rehashing of stuff, and it's really difficult to kind of come up with something that is new without, you know, just looking so far out in left field that you're like, whoa, that's you know. So it was a struggle, and it seems like it's been well received. I'm pleased with it, and other people seem to be pretty pleased with it. So you know, it seems like I kind of hit what I was going for. You know, even that though, it saw like 3 or 4 refinements. Like pick guard shape went from like 1 big pick guard to 3 split pick guards to 2 pick guards. Now I'm like got like a single pick guard, and I still offer all 3 of them because it kind of looks cool with all 3 options. But
well, the multi pick guard is reminiscent of like a Burns kind of thing, which
like the Burns Shadow,
cool.
man. That's an awesome guitar, and that's the stuff that I find real cool too. Like, you know, like I've, you know, 59 Les Paul's an awesome guitar. You know, Les Paul's an awesome guitar. You know, Strat's an awesome guitar, but like you can only see so many of them before you're like, well, that kind of looks, you know, a little bit like the one I saw before, you know. But like you start getting into like the Burns Marvin guitars and like the Flight, that was a wild one. You know, just like some of the like oddballs out there, I think are just real cool, you know.
Well, you know, speaking of oddball, I think I'm not looking at you, Mike, but the if we're talking about some of the, you know, I think, you know, I mentioned some of the finer elements of the design that you have in the guitars, like just even the I don't know what you'd call it. Is it a dovetail carving on the back of the headstock?
Oh, the volute.
The volute.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's that's kind of been refined more and more as I started to. The first couple of guitars, it was a little lumpy and, you know, things, and then it kind of turned into like kind of like a smoothed out
but
kind
you
of
didn't
point.
have to do that.
Yeah. Well, if you don't want to, well, in my opinion, it strengthens the headstock.
Right.
So for all those clumsy moments, it's kind of there. So
it looks nice too.
Yeah, it is kind of a, you know, it started off as a function thing, and then the more volutes I carved, the more I tried to like turn it into like a little bit of like an art thing, you know, like, hey man, like let me kind of, you know, make this look the same every time and add a little bit of detail to it. And so it kind of did sort of, I guess, a little bit of a signature. I can't take credit for it. I mean, volutes have been around forever. There's a lot of guys, actually there's in particular, Scott Walker does some awesome volutes. He does this double dart thing that's just real tasty.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. I'm not super familiar.
Oh, Scott Walker makes great looking guitars. Yeah, sorry. You're just inspirational guys, you know. Denny Kopp too. I think we spoke about Denny before.
Him on the show,
another guy that I'm like, I admire. So great.
You know, I think maybe one of the most striking things on you know, I don't know if you have it on. I'm trying to remember if you have it on all the guitars, but you have a non-continuous route.
Am I
saying that right?
It's
is it a bevel?
German carve. is kind of what I call it.
Okay.
But yes, it kind of starts and stops here and there, which I kind of, I mentioned earlier a little bit of SG.
Following the body shape.
A little bit of SG influence.
Yeah.
So in an SG, if you look at the heavy bevels they've got there, it'll start, it's over here, it's real wide and then it narrows down.
Yeah.
And, it kind of, a little bit of that play on drawing your eye around the guitar and things kind of starting and then disappearing.
So if you're following along in the car and trying to imagine what the heck we're actually saying, if you can imagine in your, okay, don't close your eyes. Sorry, I said,
keep those open.
Close your eyes. That bevel that we were just talking about on an SG, if that's a flat bevel, but if you imagine that was like a C-shaped bevel,
very much like a Mossrite. If you think of like like a
Mossrite, and follow that around. So you have a detail that it's not subtle. Like on an SG, it's actually really subtle.
Yeah.
This is not subtle, but it's not totally overbearing. And not only is it not overbearing, but somehow you managed to you made something that is not subtle, drew more attention to it by not staining it.
Yeah.
Like the top of the guitar.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel overbearing at all. It feels like that was always supposed to be there.
It was kind of designed in that way. I liked that's actually got a little bit of a Nags influence in a weird way. They look nothing like a Nags. I keep dropping everybody. I'm like, man, buy every guitar out there. Buy them all. Get one of mine too, but get them all because we love guitars.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's you can't.
You didn't grow up in a vacuum.
Yeah, I mean, you can't avoid it. You see something, you think it's cool eventually, but so yeah, that was actually a little bit of, I liked, Nags still is doing the stuff with like the double perfs, so they'll have, two tones on the top of the guitar and things like that. And I was like, wow, man, that's such a cool concept that you can kind of, play with the colors in that sense. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. And so when I was designing that was one of the things I wanted to do was to try to, because I don't know how they do the double purfling and I couldn't wrap my brain around it. So I was like, this could be kind of a cool thing. So I did sort of like a blend between what, like a Paul Reed Smith has a natural binding around the outside edge of that. So at where the top drops off, I leave that masked off and then do that in a natural and then continue the color down there. And it kind of adds like this neat little like pinstripe of just natural curly maple on the flame tops. Some of the the Cudas don't have it, but it's got to be a flame top to have it. But it's just a neat detail that kind of like pops it, and same thing with like the bindings. Like I remember when I first got started, I was like, did like the Paul Reed Smith kind of thing. I was like, oh, natural bindings, and then I started trying to do actual bindings. I'm like, this is hard. I got to route a channel and I got to heat this plastic and bend it and it's got to fit right. And it's, but at the end you're like, oh man, yeah, that's why Gibsons are really nice. Like that binding, like it does it.
It's a thing.
It's a class, man. It's this is an instrument. So it's I don't know.
I do like the binding though. I mean, it kind of shows that you went that next level.
Oh, thanks, man.
You know what I'm saying? Like you didn't want to just slap something together and then you got it. And plus it just really adds so much class to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love the binding.
Yeah,
I really do.
Speaking of that, and he told me the term, and I feel like a doofus because I can't remember the term, but Red Rocket guitars. He does some cool stuff too. Oh my gosh,
he uses those the checkerboard
but he called it something and I can't remember what it is. But anyways, that was one of those things when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. How did he's got some tasty stuff. If you'd like to hear the Red Rocket episode, go to theguitarknobs.com and listen to it for free.
Ding ding. If I could mention something, so before we get way off the subject or anything, but one thing I do love about your guitars is is like usually you pick up a Strat and you play Strat things You know what I'm saying? You pick up a Telly, you're going to play some Telly things, you know? You pick up, SG, Les Paul, you're going to, for me, I'm going to play something really rocky.
You can get some Back in Black going,
exactly. And one thing I liked about your guitar is it kind of left my brain not knowing what to play exactly.
It's actually kind of cool. I had never thought about that aspect of it. That's kind of cool.
Before this, before we started recording this, we, as they mentioned, we started playing on a couple of my Red House pedals, and usually being the builder of these pedals, I kind of, I know where to dial them in. Well, picking up this guitar, I didn't know if I was going to play, like, I didn't know if I should go for my Strat feel stuff or I should go for Rocky, but it kind of more opened my mind. Cause you see a lot of guitars and you just automatically label them. You see a guitarist with, you see somebody with a Telly, you're like, oh, that guy's going to show me some country, or something like that. But what I really loved about your guitars is, it kind of left me, just being open-minded, and playing things I don't usually play. So, that's something I really got to throw at you for appreciation.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, cause you look at the guitars and you don't know what you don't know where it fits in, to this genre of, all these different types of music. But yeah, it's definitely something sweet.
Yeah, I would agree. Cause in one fell swoop, you were blazing some 70s rock and roll. And then you came in, Mike, with like some really ambient stuff.
Very cool.
Really, really, Mike's a very good guitar player.
Yes, he is. I was like, man, can I get some video of that?
Yeah. I mean, one moment we went from busting out some Ted, and then all of a sudden we went to super ambient, and then we went to some funk to, we were bouncing around.
Yeah. And none of it felt alien.
Yeah.
So that was good. Moving forward, where you are right now, do you think that this is are you just gonna kind of maintain this kind of flow? Are you looking at new models? Are you where are you gonna go?
I've got 1 year plan, sticking to what I'm doing. We just set up a dealer in Destroy All Guitars out of North Carolina. Great company. If you guys are probably familiar with them. So we just set up with those guys. So in the meantime, like, we're focusing on Challengers and Cudas for the rest of this year. That said, I have a new model. You guys got to check that out. I've got the first prototype of that done. I've got a couple other versions with different pickup combinations that are in the rack right now. Yeah. So those are going. I also have a bass that I've got sketches for already that it's just trying to like keep up with, like, if I want to be able to maintain what we are doing already. Yeah. Cause I'm limited on how many guitars, so if I spend a lot of time like developing new models, that takes a lot more time than just,
a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not, I'm going through all the processes that I've already went through with the Challenger and the Cuda in that sense. So developing new models is sort of a slow but ongoing process. But it's actually one of my favorite things to do. For me, like, I like growing and moving forward. Like, I don't want to stay stagnant, I guess, is, so with this, going back to, like, we talked about, you can only see so many Les Pauls and so many Tellys. Like, I can only make so many, I can make as many cool Challengers and Cudas as you want. Please come and visit my website and buy them all. But no, you get to a spot where you're like, oh man, okay, cool. So I'm doing my 5th black Cuda now. Okay. That's cool. But, so for me, like, I like creating new things, and really that's where, like, long-term, 5-year plan, is that I've got, a handful of models. So it kind of keeps me on my toes, and I get to, I can do batches of, I'll do the Superbird. Oh, oops. Dropped a little nugget there. A Challenger, a Cuda, a new model, and things like that, and just kind of work those things in. And that's 1 year, stick to the plan. 5 years, you should see quite a few new things coming out of the little old shop here.
Yeah,
so
that's cool, man.
That's awesome.
When you are building, are you building only to order, or are you building for stock?
Do a combination of both. Depending on when the orders are placed, they either get they will either be put in the queue. I tend to try to build in batches of 10. It just for me, it makes setup times and things like that. If I'm setting up my router tables and I'm setting things up to do the different tasks, because it's a pretty small shop, so when I'm setting up to do things, it makes more sense to do 10 of them at once. And then, so it takes a little more, so it takes a little longer in the end, about 6 months to complete a batch of 10. So it just takes a little time. So sorry, I got totally, I boned it, man, and lost it.
Where I was going with that is that, you said you don't like staying stagnant, you like pushing. And one thing, if you are not familiar with these guitars, if you visit him on Facebook, one of the cool things is you tend to put out like, so here's the laydown of what I have. Do you guys like the gold pick guard, or do you like the clear pick guard, or what? I think I actually said clear pick guard at one point.
I wish I'd have showed a picture of it. I had them mirrored. I was like, man, if Paul Stanley ever calls, I am prepared. Yeah. Like, this thing is ready to go. It's just waiting.
So
if he's listening, Paul, call me.
You're doing that. You're opening it up to people, but for somebody that builds, a handful of guitars and puts that much time into all of the design decisions, and then to take a guitar which to be very popular in black with a tort guard, and then say, I'm gonna whitewash this with gold hardware. Like, that's kind of a big move, man.
Yeah,
that's pretty bold. And you've done a couple green ones. I think you got a purple one. Like, yeah.
Oh man, I did this really cool in the early days. My buddy Steve Albines, he did like a custom order, and we did kind of like a Jackson Kelly style guitar. That was a really fun build. Had this gorgeous top. It kind of went between like a bird's eye and a quilt. It was a maple, but it was just this crazy radical top. And I remember when I was, out, on a wood trip, I was looking for stuff, and I knew I had that guitar coming up, and the way that everything kind of like the way that the grain flowed and stuff, I'm like, man, that will look just awesome on that guitar, so
thanks for keeping it clean.
Yeah, I almost so
very passionate about
this. Yeah, sorry, but I was like, man, that's just gonna fit perfect, and it did. Like, I got it all book matched up, and I'm laying it out, and it's like, it was weird the way that it went, because it went from like this crazy bird's eye to this very cloud-like quilt, and it kind of like shifted out to the right, and it followed up that like upper horn of because it's like a Jackson Kelly, so it just kind of like tucked right in there, and like just looked like the wood was born to be that guitar,
right?
And it's just that's stuff that I really enjoy too, is kind of like getting to I'll lay stuff out, and like I should traditionally I would stick this way because that's how that goes, but I'm like, but man, if I flip it now, all of a sudden this does this really unique thing. And I like playing with, that's the nice thing about being a small shop, is I can like really like pay attention to the smallest details, like make sure like, oh, well, the neck and the body and everything came out of the same piece of mahogany, so in theory, all the densities should be the same. It should all resonate the same. It's all, it's its own family, at that point.
Well, also you're driving this train, which is the business. And so that's really awesome, because your personality, what you find interesting is going to pop out, like what you said, you could have this guitar, but if you flip it this way, then that's already leaving a piece of your footprint. Yeah. And so I think that's really something awesome, especially with guitars. you know, like you said, there's a million of this shape, there's a million of that shape,
and they're all great. I don't mean to knock on anything. I love Tellys, I love SGs, I love guitars. You know,
and that's what I'm saying is like it's sweet with your stuff because you're getting something from out of the ordinary, or you know what I'm saying, something different from the norm. So that's gonna, I keep bouncing back to this, but that's gonna make someone like me who's, you know, a guitarist, that's going to make me search somewhere else, you know, because I have this new guitar with this new personality, which, you know, I just think that's really awesome, especially being a small business. You're able to do that, you know, choose the direction of where your company's going.
Yeah.
And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Solid.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm really at home here. I like this. I like this place a lot.
I really do feel like,
right?
I mean, I ate.
I'm actually at home here.
Food here. Yeah. Right now we got candy and peanuts on the table. Yeah.
I'm looking around. There's like
Todd
soft lights with kind of like sawdusty.
Todd got some tea too, so it's like we got the river right outside too.
Yeah, he gets to build here, and you know, we pulled up. Aside from a little bit of traffic. It was, you could hear the river flowing right out front of us.
Birds chirping.
That's fantastic.
Yes, it is beautiful.
I'm gonna put the cherry on here because there's actually about a half mile up the river. There's an eagle's nest. Like I literally see a bald eagle out here at least 3 times a summer.
That's awesome.
We're getting like a taste of
this is like
taste of USA,
America.
Right, this is
if
America.
your fiance comes in with a hot apple pie, that's it.
Literally like
there's 2 slices of apple pie in the fridge still. Actually,
right before the podcast, I went and sat on the porch and then just seen the river flowing, and now we're inside drinking some. Exactly. Now we're inside drinking tea. We're at home here.
It's the American dream, man.
Yeah. We pull up and a pickup too.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was one there. Maybe there wasn't of any particular color that I won't mention.
Classified location.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Classified location.
Might have been.
So, oh man. Okay. Check this box off of my list. Good stuff, man. We're going to jump into our Would You Rather, and we don't have little buddy Jared to.
I miss seeing him today. I like Jared. He's a good egg.
He's a good egg.
He is.
So we're gonna do that right now. I'm gonna impersonate Jared. Would you rather? He really likes doing that.
That is beautiful.
All right, everybody. So, question for today is: would you rather have a pinstriped Telly or a Paisley Telly? Chase.
I would actually go with the Paisley, which is surprising. So I'm a big Billy Gibbons guy, you know. Okay. So like a pinstriped anything, I'm like, yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But I've got a thing for
you
Paisley
actually have
Tellys.
several examples of that in here.
Yeah.
Okay, Paisley Telly. Any particular reason?
I've just always had a thing for them. I just think they're cool.
The traditional pink.
I like the pink Paisley, but I think if I was going to do it, I'd probably go with the Crooks. Guy, just these. Yeah. Okay. And then I would probably go with his the diddly bow.
Yeah.
Or not the diddly, Billy bow. He does like a Billy bow in like a Paisley, which is.
You know what would look what might look actually pretty sick. Now you're talking about different colors. So Lincoln Guitars.
Yes.
Lincoln Guitars does a really spectacular like silver powder.
Nice.
Like a silver powder Paisley.
Does that have like a sparkle to it or something?
Yeah,
like,
it's a luster. Okay. It's like a luster. It's not flake.
Oh, that's right? Kind of cool. Yeah.
A silver powder with a like a a white silver Paisley. Dang. Nice. That would be pretty tight. So Lincoln,
they do that. They make some cool stuff too.
Hey, if you'd like to hear the Lincoln podcast, go to the Guitar.
Nice. Man, you've had everybody on here. Yeah, I was definitely late getting around. I'm sorry, man.
All right, Mike.
All right, for me, I'd probably have to go with pinstripe. Like I said, I'm a simple guy. I like just a nice, sleek design. The Paisley for me is a little too much. If you guys look at my guitars, they're just really plain.
Cool,
So
man.
I do the pinstripe though. Like I said, I'm a simple guy. It's already even hard enough trying to get the pinstripe on my guitar. So yeah,
I get
pinstripe.
you. Well, I'm going to go with pinstripe too.
Yeah.
'Cause I've kind of always wanted a pinstripe. I almost did a Telly in sort of like a burnished flat black,
Nice.
with some pinstripe on it, and just didn't.
Yeah.
Someday.
My early days of modding, I did a old ESP Viper 301
Yep.
and dummy coil up in the neck and 81 in the bridge and flat black, and did like, the spider webs in the corner, super like of the moment. That was like the thing for me at that time. But yeah, that was a cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. And I know you have you got pinstripe guitars. You've got some amazing looking pinstripe guitars. And if you want to check those out, check out his Facebook feed or Instagram. He's got some of those on.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's chasing_vintage_guitars.
He does have a beautiful feed though.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
For real.
It really is beautiful.
Okay, everybody. This has been super good, super fun, super enjoyable, and super time to go because we're running. Well, actually, I'm not going to say we're running long anymore because I do long podcasts. So
Happens.
get over it, self.
Man. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys both for coming out. It was great to sit with you
absolutely.
guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's
Please
awesome.
come out again.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Bring pedals.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah, and we'll bring Jared out. He's gonna. Oh, I know he's so angry right now.
Dude, yeah. Jared would. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell him to bring the orange sparkle. Nice guitar, but I love it because he loves it. Anyways, subscribe. Yeah.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit us at our website at theguitarknobs.com for episodes, news, and guest profiles. You can get all social with us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/guitarknobs. Give us a tweet at guitar_knobs. And check out our gallery on Instagram at guitarknobs.